Are you ready to start your cloud career? The AZ-900 Azure Fundamentals exam is the best first step for beginners in cloud and IT. In this video, we'll cover 10 carefully selected AZ-900 questions with answers and explanations. Question 1. What should you use to evaluate whether your company's Azure environment meets regulatory requirements? This question is asking you to identify the Azure tool that helps check if your company is following required regulatory and compliance standards. In cloud environments, compliance is crucial for industries like healthcare, banking, and government. The goal is to pick the Azure feature that analyzes compliance posture. Options: A, the Knowledge Center website; B, the Advisor Blade from the Azure portal; C, Compliance Manager from the Security Trust portal; D, the Security Center Blade from the Azure portal. The Knowledge Center is just a help site for documentation and FAQs. Azure Advisor gives best practice recommendations, like cost savings or performance tuning. Compliance Manager helps with compliance in Microsoft 365, not specifically for Azure resources. Security Center, now called Microsoft Defender for Cloud, is where you check compliance reports, regulatory benchmarks like ISO, NIST, HIPAA, and security posture of your Azure environment. Example: if your company is in healthcare, you might need to check HIPAA compliance. Security Center provides a dashboard showing whether your Azure setup meets that requirement. Correct answer: D, the Security Center Blade from the Azure portal. The Security Center Blade in Azure, also referred to as Microsoft Defender for Cloud, helps monitor your environment's compliance with industry standards and regulations. It provides compliance dashboards, recommendations, and benchmarks to ensure your Azure resources align with frameworks like ISO 27001, PCI DSS, and HIPAA. In short, Security Center is the go-to tool inside Azure to check if your setup meets compliance and regulatory standards. Question 2. What can Azure Information Protection encrypt? This question is asking about Azure Information Protection, AIP, a service that helps organizations classify, label, and protect data. The key point is to recognize the type of data AIP is designed to secure. It's not about entire databases or networks, but about documents and emails that need to remain secure inside and outside the organization. Options: network traffic, documents and email messages, an Azure storage account, an Azure SQL database. Think of Azure Information Protection as a digital security stamp. When you apply it to a file or email, it can encrypt, label, and restrict access. Example: if you send a confidential financial report via email, AIP ensures only authorized users, like your manager or finance team, can open it, even if the email is accidentally forwarded. Notice what it does not do. It doesn't encrypt all network traffic. That's handled by things like TLS, SSL, or VPNs. It doesn't encrypt an entire Azure storage account or SQL database. Those use other encryption methods like transparent data encryption or storage service encryption. Correct answer: documents and email messages. Azure Information Protection encrypts documents and emails, so only intended recipients can access them. It allows you to apply policies, labels, and access controls that travel with the file or message, ensuring data protection both inside and outside your organization. In short, AIP is all about protecting sensitive documents and emails, not entire databases or networks. Question 3. You have a resource group named RG1. You plan to create virtual networks and app services in RG1. You need to prevent the creation of virtual machines only in RG1. What should you use? This question is testing your knowledge of resource management and governance in Azure. You're being asked, how can you block only virtual machines from being created in a specific resource group while still allowing other resources like networks or app services? The trick here is to pick the option that is precise and selective, not something that blocks everything. Options: a lock, an Azure role, a tag, an Azure policy. Let's quickly break down what each option does. Lock prevents all changes, delete or read only, but not specific resource types. If you locked RG1, you wouldn't be able to create anything, not just VMs. Azure role, RBAC, controls who can do actions, not what types of resources can be created. Tag, just metadata for grouping billing, doesn't enforce restrictions. Azure policy defines rules and conditions for what can or cannot be created, e.g., deny VMs but allow other resources. Example, if your company doesn't want developers spinning up costly VMs in RG1, you'd create an Azure policy that says, deny creation of virtual machines in RG1, but developers could still create app services or networks. Correct answer, an Azure policy. Azure policies can be used to define requirements for resource properties during deployment and for existing resources. With Azure Policy, you can enforce rules like which types of resources can be created, where they can be created, and even naming conventions. In this case, you would create a policy assigned to RG1 that specifically denies the creation of virtual machines. Why not a lock? Because a read-only lock would block the creation of all resources, not just VMs. Why not RBAC? Because RBAC manages permissions of users, not resource type restrictions. Why not tags? Because tags are labels, not enforcement tools. Therefore, the best solution is Azure Policy, since it enforces selective control and keeps your environment compliant with standards. Question 4. This question requires that you evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. The Marketplace Gallery is a feature for Azure Automation that puts existing automation sample, utility, and scenario to help you get up and running quickly with your automation tasks. Instructions. Review the text inside. If it makes the statement correct, select No change is needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. This is a check the statement style question. You're asked if the text inside the brackets, Marketplace Gallery, makes the statement correct. If yes, you choose No change is needed. If not, you select the right replacement. The goal here is to know which gallery feature in Azure Automation provides pre-built runbooks to help you quickly automate tasks. Options: No change is needed, Runbook Gallery, Handbook Gallery, Automation Gallery. Let's break it down. Marketplace Gallery exists in Azure, but it's for third-party apps, VMs, and solutions, not for automation runbooks. Runbook Gallery. This is the correct feature for Azure Automation. It provides ready-made runbooks, automation scripts that you can import and use immediately. Handbook Gallery doesn't exist in Azure terminology. Automation Gallery sounds close, but the official feature is called Runbook Gallery. Example, suppose you want to automate shutting down VMs every night to save costs. Instead of writing a runbook script from scratch, you can go to the Runbook Gallery, search for a pre-built shutdown VM runbook, and import it into your automation account in just a few clicks. Correct answer, Runbook Gallery X. Creating polished Azure Automation runbook solutions can take time and effort. The Azure Automation Runbook Gallery was created to make this easier by providing pre-built automation samples, utilities, and scenario-based runbooks. With the Runbook Gallery, you can browse and import community or Microsoft-provided runbooks, speed up automation setup without coding everything from scratch, leverage solutions already tested and used by others. In short, Marketplace Gallery is incorrect because that's for general Azure solutions. The correct feature is the Runbook Gallery, which is specific to Azure automation tasks. Question 5. You are planning to deploy approximately 200 web apps, mobile apps, and API apps in Azure. Which of the following pricing model for Azure Service Apps is best suited and cost-effective for this deployment? This question is testing your understanding of app service pricing tiers in Azure. Each tier, Shared, Basic, Standard, Premium, offers different levels of performance, scalability, and features. The goal here is to choose the most cost-effective model that supports a large number of apps, 200 in this case, without unnecessary advanced features. Options: Shared, Premium, Standard, Basic. Here's how the tiers compare. Shared, lowest cost, but apps share resources with other customers. Limited scaling, not suitable for production workloads with 200 apps. Basic, dedicated compute resources, better performance than shared, supports custom domains, SSL, and is cost-effective for large deployments without extra advanced features. Standard adds auto-scaling and staging slots, but costs more. Premium, designed for high-end production apps needing advanced scaling, high performance, and enterprise features, but much more expensive. Example, if you're deploying 200 apps that don't need heavy enterprise features, the basic tier gives you the right balance of cost and capability. You'll get dedicated resources per instance, so your apps won't compete with others like in shared. Correct answer, The basic pricing tier is best for a large number of apps, like 200, where you want dedicated compute resources at a lower cost than standard or premium. Shared tier would not be suitable for 200 apps due to resource limitations. Premium would be overkill and expensive. Standard provides additional features, but if cost effectiveness is the key requirement, basic is the right choice. In short, for cost effective deployment of 200 apps, choose the basic app service plan. Question 6. Which of the following is not correct regarding Azure Hybrid Benefit? This question checks whether you clearly understand the Azure Hybrid Benefit. You need to spot the incorrect statement about how the benefit works. Azure Hybrid Benefit is all about helping customers save costs in Azure by reusing their on-premises Windows Server and SQL Server licenses. Options. Azure SQL Database is eligible for this benefit. It is available in all regions. This benefit cannot be applied on existing VMs. It helps to maximize the value of existing on-premises license investment. Let's carefully examine the options. Azure SQL Database is eligible. Yes, SQL workloads are covered under this benefit. It is available in all regions. Correct. Hybrid benefit is not restricted by geography. This benefit cannot be applied on existing VMs. Incorrect. You can apply hybrid benefit on both new and existing Azure VMs. Helps maximize license investment. True. That's the main goal, to reuse your on-prem licenses instead of paying twice. Example. If your company already owns Windows Server Standard Edition with software assurance, you can apply hybrid benefit to an existing Azure VM and immediately start saving on licensing costs without rebuilding or redeploying the VM. Correct answer. This benefit cannot be applied on existing VMs. The Azure Hybrid Benefit is a pricing offer designed to reduce Azure costs by letting you reuse on-premises Windows Server and/or SQL Server licenses with software assurance. With this benefit, eligible customers pay reduced rates on Azure Virtual Machines, IaaS, Azure SQL Database, PaaS, SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines, IaaS. Eligible products include Windows Server Standard Edition with software assurance, Windows Server Data Center Edition with software assurance, SQL Server Enterprise Core with software assurance, SQL Server Standard Core with software assurance, Azure SQL Database. The key detail here: Azure Hybrid Benefit can be applied on both new and existing VMs. That's why the statement, "This benefit cannot be applied on existing VMs," is not correct. Key takeaway: hybrid benefit equals reuse licenses plus reduce Azure costs. Apply to both new and existing workloads. Question 7. This question requires that you evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. An Azure SLA that defines an uptime of 99.999% only allows for about 10 minutes of total downtime per year. Instructions. Review the text inside. If it makes the statement correct, select No change is needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. No change is needed. 658. This question is testing your knowledge of Azure SLAs, service level agreements, and what 5 nines, 99.99% availability means in real downtime. You need to check whether the stated downtime in minutes matches the real value. Let's break it down. 99.9% availability means up to 8 hours 45 minutes of downtime per year. 99.99% availability means up to 52 minutes of downtime per year. 99.999% availability, also called 5 nines, allows only about 5 minutes and 15 seconds of downtime per year. So if the question says 10 minutes, that's too high. It's actually around 5 minutes. Think of it this way: if a critical app like online banking promises 99.999% uptime, it means customers will almost never face downtime in a year. Correct answer: the correct downtime for an SLA of 99.999%, 5 nines availability, is approximately 5 minutes per year, not 10 minutes. This is because 5 nines availability means services are highly reliable. For example, if a video streaming platform had 5 nines uptime, you might only experience a short 5-minute disruption in the entire year, which most users wouldn't even notice. Question 8. Which of the following is not the key characteristic of SLAs for Azure products and services? This question tests your knowledge of Azure SLAs, service level agreements. SLAs define the guarantees Microsoft provides for Azure services. You need to identify which option is not considered a direct SLA characteristic. Options: high availability, performance targets, Uptime, service credits. For example, Azure might guarantee 99.95% uptime for a virtual machine service. If that uptime is not met, you could receive service credits. These are clear SLA features, but high availability is a broad design principle, not a direct SLA metric. Correct answer. High availability is not directly listed as an SLA characteristic. The main SLA characteristics are performance targets, guarantees about response time/throughput, uptime, percentage of service availability, service credits, compensation if targets aren't met. High availability, while important, is a general reliability concept rather than a formal SLA feature. Question 9. There are some global Azure services that do not require you to select a particular region while configuring it. Which of the following service requires you to select a region? This question checks if you can distinguish between global services, not tied to a region, and regional services, require region selection. Azure AD, Traffic Manager, and Azure DNS are global services, while Azure Monitor works with data in a specific region. Options: Microsoft Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Azure Traffic Manager, Azure DNS, Azure Monitor. For example, when you configure Azure Active Directory, it is automatically global. Your tenant works across all regions. But when you set up Azure Monitor, you must pick a region where logs and metrics are stored. Correct answer: Azure Monitor, Azure AD, global service, no region selection. Traffic Manager, global DNS-based traffic routing service. Azure DNS, global service for hosting DNS domains. Azure Monitor requires you to choose a region to store monitoring data. Question 10. Which of the following statement is not correct regarding zone in Azure? Options: Zone is a geographical grouping of Azure regions for billing purpose. Data transfer pricing is based on the zones. Zone is an isolated location inside of an Azure region. Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, and DE Zone are valid zone types. This question is testing whether you can differentiate between zone and availability zone. A zone for billing is about grouping Azure regions for pricing purposes. An availability zone is a physical separation inside a region to increase fault tolerance. So, the trick here is to spot which statement wrongly describes zone. Think of it like this. Zones, billing zones, are about pricing categories across regions, like Zone 1 was US and Europe, Zone 2 Asia, etc. Availability zones are about physical data center separation within a single region, like East US has AZ-1, AZ-2, AZ-3. The confusing part is that both use the word zone, but they mean very different things. Here's a quick breakdown of the billing zones. Zone, example regions. Zone 1, US, Canada, UK, Europe, France, Switzerland, Norway. Zone 2, Japan, Korea, Australia, India, Southeast Asia. Zone 3, Brazil, South Africa, UAE. DE Zone 1, Germany, special sovereign regions. So if you see Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, DE Zone 1, it's about pricing, not physical separation. Correct answer: zone is an isolated location inside of an Azure region.